Hello, this is Clarence Moy with Awards Daily here with cinematographer Mihai Malamare for Netflix's The Harder They Fall, which will be streaming here in early November. Mihai, pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
So let's jump right into it. So you're working with James Samuel, who is the director of The Harder They Fall. This is his first major feature as a director. How was that experience for you? What did he bring to the table that made the job easier for you? What was your collaboration like?
He brought a lot. I mean, not only I remember even from the first meeting, he brought some amazing visuals, which they end up being our main visual reference, and that being Kadir's Nelson's paintings,
Mm.
and the color saturation there, and like pretty much everything there are some frames we actually try to reproduce, like Trudy on the Horse. That's a direct reference to Kadir Nelson's paintings. But also, what was very interesting for me, the script had a lot of music notes, but I didn't realize until we started working how much music is a part of the process for James, and as you can see in the movie, how much music plays all together. And it's rare, but it was really interesting to just like watch dailies with music, or have music on set, or have James. I think the way still images for me represent like an amazing reference. The same way is music for James. So sometimes I find it easier to show a director images that I'm thinking of than to explain them, and the same, it's easier for James to just play some music and it's like, okay, this is what I'm thinking of. This is how that scene, this is the rhythm for that scene, or this is what I'm thinking to do with that scene. So that was the first time I worked with a director that knows so much music, and like that uses the music in such a way.
So you mentioned the paintings. Forgive me, I didn't catch the name of the artist, but you mentioned the paintings that he brought in terms of how he wanted to represent the visuals of the film. Talk to me a little bit more about that and how that did influence the shots that you took.
It did a lot. I mean, mainly it was the color saturation, and the idea was that we'll try to stay away from the classic dusty Western, or like the dusty Sergio Leone type of imagery. And I remember for certain things, but like he likes contrast and glossiness, and the idea for Redwood, for example, like the way he was explaining it to all of us, to the art department included, was like, imagine that if this would be like as if they're like stills printed on high gloss paper. And we understood immediately, and we went for that type of contrast and glossiness, and like in the color that were chosen for buildings, and in the color grading and lighting and everything.
I most noticed that in the shots of Redwood at night, where there's this brilliant lighting from the street lighting and from the street lighting, and then of course the buildings are almost primary colors. They're vivid reds, blues, greens. It's an incredibly different color palette for a Western, and I thought it was really refreshing. So that color palette came from the paintings before.
A lot of it, yes.
Okay.
Our main visual references were Kadir Nelson, and we found a book that is called Congo Tales. I think Peter Hankett is the still photographer, and they have a similar element in common, and that's like color saturation. Like those stills, they have another amazing element that we try to use once in a while, and it's like using colored lights and saturated colors within the lights. And I think it's interesting when you have such a reference, because then like all the departments like costumes and art department and and us, like we all go into the same direction, and we kind of complete each other.
Going back to that shot of Redwood at night, I'm talking about the lighting. You obviously have lights pouring in from windows. You've got, as I've mentioned, lights on the streets. You've got, overhead lighting. And then when you go interior, there's a lot of light there. How much during the day were you using natural lighting? Was it all set lighting? Kind of what were your lighting designs there?
We were using a lot of natural light. I mean, the reflective surface of the ground in New Mexico is so amazing, and that's a huge advantage when you have all your characters wear cowboy hats. You don't need an overhead. You don't need. It's like just that reflectiveness, and the harsh sun will work for most of their shots. When especially Redwood, when we designed the night scenes, and because we wanted to make Redwood pop and be different than all the other little towns, I'm pretty sure we overdid it. Like the amount of practicals, and like we had like probably over 100 retrofitted lamps and street lights and all that. So I was actually joking with my gaffer Jay Kemp, and I was like telling him this will be probably the most amount of lights I will ever use for a night scene. But I think it worked, because when you have the motivation, you can go for it.
Right.
And that in comparison to Douglastown, which was lit by fire barrels mainly. And that was the whole idea, that Douglastown will have mud and the wet ground and fire barrels, and Redwood will be glossy with a lot of street lights and a lot of lights coming through the windows and in front of like storefronts and all that.
Then you've got the other town whose name is escaping me, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the town of nothing but white people, with all the white walls and the white buildings. And was that a challenge to shoot that? I mean, did you have too much light reflecting off of those bright surfaces?
A little bit, but the idea, I mean, it's so interesting, because when you're in prep and you start discussing all these ideas, like I usually try not to think about challenges, and I leave those for later. And of course it was a challenge, but I thought it was such an amazing idea that we went for it. And for sure, like now we have more tools, and we can keep things in control, and it is always challenging, but I think with our brilliant DIT, Eli Berg, and with all the technology we have, it wasn't that bad. But I think it works so well. It's like one of the really like few moments where a set gets uploaded like by the audience, and everything else pops. Like the red dress, it's such an amazing visual there.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just so, the whole film is just so, it feels so new. It brings such a new and innovative approach to Western, and it just, from the production design to the cinematography, just gorgeous all the way around. I would like to dive into a couple of sequences that I personally geeked out over while I was watching the film. One of which happens very early on, where you have the bandits who are being photographed from the top, and they're riding their horses, and the money is flying out of the bags. And how did you do that? Like, was there a drone or something like that?
There was, yeah,
okay.
there was a drone, and I mean, like the technology gets better and better every year, but I still try to stay away from small devices. And like, I don't think I ever used a GoPro in a movie unless it was supposed to be a GoPro, So we were able to fly the Red Monstro, and I think it's you have a few restrictions, but like I think the payback of like having the same quality as your main camera package is huge. There were a bunch of VFX elements, like the flying money and all that, but and of course, like there was a scene that was shot in multiple days with second unit and with stunt doubles and with all those elements.
So, and maybe this is the one you're talking about. There's a shot toward the end of the film that kind of starts the climactic battle sequence or the gunfight, where the camera comes in from behind Idris, and it goes over his shoulder through the pane of window, down the street, directly into a close-up of Jonathan Majors. Talk to me about filming that sequence.
That was a cable cam, and
Okay.
it's always great. Like it's an amazing tool. Like everything in movie making, it's all about teamwork and making sure everybody gets their chances to do their best work. There is a lot of VFX in that shot, even if it doesn't feel like. Just to be able to run the cables and to have the camera position behind Idris, we had to remove the whole window, and that was digitally put back. Other than that, and the giant crane behind the church that was supporting the other side of the cable cam, and a small lightweight zoom lens from Panavision that allowed us to start really wide and then end into a medium close up. Amazingly, like the main problems we had with that shot, like if you think about it, it's like wind, and there are so many things that can go wrong, but the only thing that went wrong, and we were struggling with it, was the Wi-Fi and radio signal interference that we had in the town. So, because being such a distance, we were losing remote focus at one point, and we're losing image at another point. So it was more tracing all the Wi-Fi and other radio signals that were interfering with us than the problems you would think you would have when you put a camera on a wire.
So there's also a shot where it takes place just after someone has blown up a wagon full of money. And then you go to a very tight close up on Idris, and you're filming his eyes, and then you see the reflection of the burning money in his eye. Is that VFX, or is that's VFX? Yeah.
Which it's great. I mean, I think VFX is such an amazing tool, and it can help so much as long as you're planning accordingly and you don't expect they will fix stuff later.
Right.
And especially that it's one thing when you're treating it as a tool, and you're doing your best to get those VFX plates while you're there. So we did have a camera that was recording that reflection while the wagon exploded, and that's why I think it looks so good.
Okay. There's also obviously the film ends in a traditional shootout, even though as you mentioned before, the visuals and such are definitely not traditional Western. But what was sort of the working agreement for how you were going to film that shootout sequence? I mean, you do have the shots to the eyes of people looking at each other that's you do see in other Westerns. And I think there was, playing with genre there, but what was your working agreement in terms of how you were going to film that the climactic gunfight?
It was, I mean, it's pretty much our biggest scene in the entire movie. So we realized we have to storyboard that because there were so many moving parts and so many elements. And it was not only storyboards, but I remember drawing maps, like trying to locate each character and trying to figure out like where everybody is at a certain moment. It was a scene that was like took a lot of team effort. Like it was shot, I think, during 7 days, including second unit, multiple stunts, multiple stunt doubles, and so on. But that's the best case scenario when you have enough time to rehearse, when you have enough time to draw storyboards and to go on location with everybody and try to figure out exactly if what you planned ahead will work, and so on. I think it's nothing worse than doing a scene like that and jumping into it and trying to figure out as you go.
Right. You also have to, as you've mentioned, James loves music, communicates through music, has a song, and songs are used throughout the entire film. It's not a musical, but at times it feels like it. But you did have to film a couple of musical sequences, particularly the one that I'm thinking about is when Jonathan Majors' characters goes to Idris's saloon, and you're following the woman who's doing the dancing through the room. Talk to me about filming that sequence.
Again, that took a lot of rehearsals, and we actually had live music there, so it was from that perspective was very easy, and we for us it was just to figure out the timing of the Steadicam move and all the elements we wanted to show, like the high angle, the little crane we had there. But it's nothing better than having either live music or the music that you, a music reference, and then determining the rhythm, and everybody can hear it and can come up with ideas or can understand what's all about. That set in particular was so amazing. I mean, just Martin, our production designer, did an amazing job with everything. But I remember that set struck me like one of those most beautiful sets we had. Like just thinking of the background for where Idris was sitting, and all those reflective materials and everything there was amazing.
Unexpectedly lush. And it must be exciting to you as a cinematographer to approach a project like this that doesn't try to be, there's nothing wrong with a traditional Westerner, of course, but there is an excitement, I would have to think, behind trying to come up with an innovative approach.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things there in Trudy's Saloon was, and it was a hard decision because if you think about it, we our initial thought was like, okay, we'll fill it up with smoke. It's a place where definitely would be smoke. But then we realized that by doing that, the contrast will lower so much, and we realized by doing that we will lose the glossiness that James wanted, and that was probably one of the hardest decisions, just like not to use smoke at all. But I think it was the right one, because you don't lose any details. Like you feel that everything is glossy there.
Yeah. Mihai, I think that wraps everything that I had for you today. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the brilliant work on, of course, the Harder They Fall. And I hope everybody who's able to see it can see it on a big screen, because it looks absolutely gorgeous there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.